Okay, let's start chapter 8, messaging and media strategies. The learning outcomes will be to describe the characteristics of creative minds, great creative minds, to contrast the roles of an agency's creative department and its business manager, account executives. 3, to discuss how teams manage tensions and promote creativity in integrated marketing communications. And 4, to evaluate your own passion for creativity. This chapter starts the third part of the textbook. The textbook is divided in 3 parts. The first one is about the process of brand promotion, marketing. The second was understanding the market and the environment for promoting brands. And now we start the third part, which is about the tools that are used in the promotional mix, evaluation and measurement of brand promotion. So before going into the specific tools within the promotional mix, direct marketing, internet activities, personal selling, public relations, sales promotions, etc. We have to talk about the messages that are used and the creativity utilized. Remember that we talk in chapter 5 about the beliefs and attitudes that our communications try to reinforce, to modify, to create. So the matter that we work with is the beliefs and attitudes. But we also said in chapter 5 that there is a lot of clutter, there is a lot of noise, and the consumer will not always pay attention to what we want to tell them. So we need to find creative ways to catch their attention. And this is what we will talk today. As we see in this visual ad, well, it's a very effective way, I think, of grabbing the attention of the viewer and to think about this issue, about the HIV AIDS awareness and prevention by using an image of a couple, which conveys that you are not only having a relationship with that person, but also with all the other people that that partner has had in the past, and that may create a risk of getting an infectious disease. And so this is just one example of this creative element that is one of the different components of the results of your advertising. So if it's going to be effective or not, it depends not only in the message, not only in what you say, but also in how you tell that message and whether it grabs the attention or not. And this creativity comes from a process, it's a human process that is a talent, right? Creativity is a talent. It's something that you can develop, certainly. It's something that you can train and work on, but there is an underlying skill and talent that people are born with. Just like playing music, playing piano or guitar. I mean, some people have more difficulty than others. For some people, it's easier to take a musical instrument and start playing with it, and it'll be easier for some individuals to start creating music. And this is something that has been seen across a number of disciplines. I'm using the case of music, which is something we associate with, of course, it's part of arts, it's an artistic element, but also is it requires creativity, but you also require creativity for other endeavors. You need creativity for science, for doing research, right? In politics, right? You need creativity for a number of activities in life, and we see here on this screen, on this slide, great creative minds, right? That are not just artists like Picasso, but also social activists like Gandhi, psychologists like Freud, writers and scientists. So the sensibilities that are reflective of these personalities of these people are um, self-confidence, alertness, unconventionality, and an obsessive commitment to their work. So it's not just about having a talent and doing it without any effort, but you have to commit to work, to persevere, and achieve excellence. So creative minds, something that in the case of business and marketing, of course, is uh, required. For example, to create a commercial that grabs the attention of the public. Let's watch this commercial. This is Ariel brand, a detergent, and this is a commercial that was transmitted in India. Let's let's watch this commercial, even if you cannot listen to the word. Well, it's not in English, but you will see the captions in English. So as you could see, well, this is a long video. It's not a commercial that you would likely see uh, on TV. More likely, this was used in social media um, and internet, right? But here you saw the way that the creators utilize creativity. Remember, in chapter 5, we talk about two routes for reaching consumers by sending your message depending on the level of involvement. And we said when there is a message that you want to transmit through the high involvement route, this is the central route, you make people think about the product, the attributes, etc. We don't see that here. Actually, this video did not mention anything about the detergent. It didn't mention anything about the type of detergent or what it does to clean the clothes or remove the stains. I mean, it's more focused on something around the consumer everyday life, trying to advocate for equality of workload or in marriages, right? And again, this is in the context of another country in India. Remember, we talk about culture and how commercials, advertisement, promotion must be related and make sense in the context of the cultural setting it is located in. Um, so this advertisement is more on the other route we talk about, the low involvement route, the peripheral route. Remember that we said that's when you focus on some peripheral, again, type of uh, connection or influence, not central root like thinking about the product attributes, thinking about the product benefit, but more thinking about something that connects with consumers' life. In this case, it's an emotional appeal because it's something that makes you think not about the detergent, but about the necessity to contribute, for example, equally in labor chores, in labor, in home uh, chores and things that you have to share with your wife. And that's the way that Ariel, the detergent brand, tries to connect and associate and send a meaningful message with consumers. So certainly that's a commercial that is not easily ignored for if it's going to the correct target audience, right? So it's not just one of those commercials that you forget. This is another example of promotion, not audiovisual, television or video commercial, but this is another example of creativity by using a self-promotion activity. This was in Mexico. San Juan is a company that produces and sells eggs. It's an egg distributor. It's one of the major egg company in Mexico. And what they notice is that people utilize the cardboard boxes, right? They are cardboard boxes like the ones you see on the screen. People, lower income consumers, use those boxes as luggage, right? Like to put their stuff when they were traveling, mostly in buses, not much in airplanes, right? Because they were low income population. So they noticed that the people use those cardboard boxes, and they came up with this creative idea of creating or manufacturing luggage, pieces of luggage with the name and the brand of the egg company, and they set up stands in bus stations throughout the country, and whenever they saw somebody who was using one of the cardboard boxes, they gave them one of these pieces of luggage for them to use, right? And as a way of implementing a marketing communication and promotional technique. This is called sometimes below the line marketing, below the line, BTL, because it's not massive marketing efforts like through television or through radio or mass media, but this is more on a one-to-one relation with consumers, trying to interact more individually with consumers. And this is something they did in bus stations again. And then this became viral in social media. This is something that people started taking pictures and videos and talking about on Twitter and Facebook and other social media platforms. So it also contributed, and of course that was part of the purpose of San Juan Company, to generate word of mouth advertising, to generate publicity, people talking about it, what a good idea or clever, smart idea they had, and people talk about it, and this enhances the image and reputation of the brand because it's seen as a company that is giving these free pieces of luggage, these bags, which are, by the way, useful for the people in travel. And this is another instance of the use of creativity in marketing. So what we need to look at when we work in an advertising agency or in a department in a company that deals with the promotion, we have to work together in teams, and sometimes these teams are different in terms of their skills and talent, but there needs to be a combination of what is called the creative people and the suits, right? Who are the creatives and who are the suits people? Where are the creatives? The art focus staff are those who are more in this artistic endeavor of coming up with ideas and brainstorming ways of telling the stories to consumers, how we want to sell them. And then we have, of course, the suits or the more research management oriented staff within the organization, which are looking into the concept of and the objective that you want to achieve through the promotion. This is more what you would be at, most of you here in the business program, of course, are in the marketing major because you want to continue a career in marketing. And more likely, if you later down the road you work in a company more focused on the promotional part, the advertising part, more likely you will be on the suit side, right? The research dash science related tasks, such as doing the forecasting of sales, establishing objectives of promotion, monitoring the performance, right, of the campaigns from a more managerial standpoint. The creatives, and I'm not saying that you do not have creativity, but most of the times the people who are on the creative side, they are people who study, they go to college for majors in graphic design, in media production, right? More in the humanities or in the communications departments. But one more time, this does not mean that there is an exclusion of these talents and skills on business majors. However, like here in the university, if you go to the communications department, graphic design, they are the ones who are more in this artistic type of focus. However, both sides are necessary. Both sides are are essential for the success of a campaign, although there may be some conflicts or some discrepancies in the opinions of the creatives versus the suits. However, it's been shown that successful campaigns are the ones that combine the skills of both parts. Here in this link to Ad Age, the advertising magazine that is leader in the field, well, I just wanted to show this and bring this up because they talk from time to time about the moves and the jobs of these leading marketers and creatives people in advertising agencies. And as you can see, for example, at um, this executive, these are people who are kind of very extroverted. One more time, more of an artistic orientation, very outgoing, kind of people who think out of the box. And these are capabilities that, one more time, you can develop them, you can train to be better in those skills, but largely you are born with these things, with these talents. Mm, these people, well, I recommend you reading this magazine from time to time because it tells you a lot of what's going on in this industry of advertising agency, and some of you probably will find this a potential career if you have not thought about the advertising field. Well, this may be a promissory area, professionally speaking. Here you have another, this is a comparison, this is another illustration that compares what are the philosophies, what are the type of tools and activities that these two uh, uh, teams or members of the team in a creative advertising agency are focused on, what are their strengths, right? However, regardless of this distinction, one more time, these work together in order to put the best of their talents and their abilities into the service of the campaign, whereas the artists, the more creative members of the staff, focus on those artistic elements of the campaign. Still you need, right, for example, here on the right hand side of the marketing scientist, which is what you will be more likely on that track. You need to constantly check for the effectiveness and monitoring the performance of the campaign, looking at the numbers, at the return on investment, etc. So the idea here to maintain is that both parts of the team are necessary, right? And this requires collaboration, this requires coordination, and what is the way in which a campaign that is to be launched, what is the way in which this can be communicated in a simple way within the staff, within the organization? This is through the creative brief. The creative brief is a document that outlines and channels the essential creative idea or objectives. So that's what I'm saying, that the map that will communicate, the blueprint that will communicate to the rest of the organization, to the clients, etc., what you want to do in a campaign, is this creative brief, which is the result or the outcome of the creative process involving both teams, the creatives and the suits. What is a creative brief like? If you go to page 168 in your textbook, you have there an example of a creative brief, and this is a document that tells in synthesis what is, let's look first, what is the product of service that the campaign is about, right? Who are the competition? Remember the concept of positioning, so this is reflected in this part. What is the competition, or who are the competition? who is the audience that we are talking to, the target market, what is the consumer need or problem that we are addressing through this campaign. Next, remember we talk about beliefs and attitudes, so that is reflected here. The outcomes or the result of the research that you conducted is reflected here. What does the consumer currently think about us? What is what they think? How do they see you? What are their perceptions about your brand? And what one thing do we want them to believe? What is what we want to do through this message, right? So you know what they think about you, about your brand, and then you say what is what you want them to believe. Are you going to make them change their perception, or are you going to reinforce something they already believe, right? What can we tell them that we will make them believe this? And this is the, again, part of this creative element. What is what you want to tell them, and how? How are you gonna tell them your story, your message, so they believe you? And what is the tonality of the ad? So these different elements, this checklist, we can call it that way also, is a concentration of the whole work, the rest of the work that the advertising agency in this case is doing to put out there your message. So the research, the planning, all the work that you do in advance before actually deciding to do before actually doing a commercial, before actually putting it out there in the media, you have to do this so you have clear in your mind, in your objectives, what you want to do. I want you to show to see these two videos. These are in the Cengage CourseMate platform. In case you have the access code, you can see this on your own and several other ads. If not, then we will watch them here. Maybe you cannot hear the sound, but these commercials do not have dialogues, but it's more about music. So let's see these videos one more time. These are in the Cengage platform, and you go to chapter 8, which is where we're at. Remember, you had other tools for studying for the exams and for quizzes, practice, etc. So you go to the videos, and let's see this. It's a commercial for Ford. As you could see in this commercial, what we see is the use of a specific creative device, which is showing digital projection videos of people superimposed in different parts of the vehicle. So this commercial doesn't have um, a conversation between consumers or a dialogue. This is basically showing the car with different digital projections, etc., trying to build some associations. The only words they talk or say is at the end, and it's the tagline: we all want to get more out of life. The tonality, right, what it tries to project or convey, um, is the impression or a sense of adventure and risk. So this type of elements that describe the ad, these are the things that need to be, or the elements that should be included in a creative brief, right? How you are going to tell your message, using what resources. I mean, here is just only three elements. I'm not including all the parts of the creative brief. But one more time, these ideas must be clear before actually recording and doing an advertisement. Let's see another ad which is included in this platform uh, for the textbook. This is a company, a department store in the UK. John Lewis is a department store in that sells furniture initially, but I believe now they sell other products, consumer goods.
She can do as she pleases, she's nobody's fool. And she can't be convicted, she's earned her degree. And the most she will do is throw shadows at you, but she's always a woman to me.
This commercial, in the same way that the Ford's commercial, has elements that are established before producing the ad, right? And here, for example, the creative strategy they use is to dramatize the stages of a woman's life and how this store meets her needs at every stage. So that's the message. Again, this is more in the peripheral route. It has a tonality which is sentimental, nostalgic, right? It is heart touching, um, and the tagline is our lifelong commitment to you. So something like this would be reflected in the creative brief in advance, one more time, of actually producing the commercial, based on research, based on the insights provided by research in the market, talking to consumers, and in the case of the teams that work on developing campaigns, these creative briefs help in putting the ideas clear and easy to communicate to the other parties involved in the decision making of the campaign, right? On the people who will pay, who will put the money, on the clients, on whoever is producing the commercial. I'm gonna show you here a couple of slides that are not here in this textbook. This material is not in this textbook, but this was in your Principles of Marketing course. If you remember, when you took Principles of Marketing, you learn about different appeals that advertisement have, right? How the producers, the developers of campaigns, they can use different appeals in their ads. So the campaign ad can focus on information, on rational um, uh, contents, which would be, of course, the central route versus the peripheral. Sometimes more emotional appeal, like we just saw in the John Lewis commercial. Sometimes you just want to remind something, you don't want to inform something new, but just reinforce an idea. Then you have executional styles. Here we see a number of possible formats or styles. Comparison of products, so you say to the viewer, to the audience, how your product is better than this other, or you demonstrate how this product can be used in a more convenient way or easier to do something than others. You may have somebody tell a testimonial, right, of how certain medicine help them cure a disease or some health problem. Other times you just want to show what is called a slice of life, right? A scene of a everyday situation in your home or in school, right? This is something that Coca-Cola does, for example, and they show slices of life of people having fun, right? Having a good time. Um, or other types of executional styles like the lifestyle, right at the bottom here. You also have tonality. Are you gonna say or tell a straightforward message? Are you gonna use humor instead or be more dramatic? Are you gonna utilize a sex appeal, right? Maybe convey fear or apprehension. So this is a tonality. And the creative tactic or the technology use, as we saw in the Ford commercial, right? They were using images of the car, of course, with projection, digital projections on it. So this is kind of some sort of animation. Sometimes you use celebrities, famous people, artists, actors, and basketball players, etc. Sometimes the focus or the creative tactics focuses on music, on a jingle or some slogan, right? So this is again material that is not in your textbook, but I think it was necessary to bring it up here because this is part of what should be included in the creative brief. According to Teresa Amabile, a researcher in Harvard, she considers that in an organization where you have teams of um, professionals working together, as we said, uh, some on the creative side of the production and some on the managerial side, well, you gotta have certain characteristics in your organization to foster this creativity. And these are, of course, support from the organization, freedom to work, and autonomy, certain autonomy to make decisions. You have to provide the resources. Um, etc. So these are different characteristics that uh, contribute to generating a climate, an environment in which the work of the creative and the scientific, the suits and the creatives, um, produce or and deliver the results that you want. Finally, for learning objective 4, which is about assessing your own creativity, what I have given here at the bottom of this slide is a test. This is a link for a test to assess your creativity, and this is something that will uh, show you a number of questions. These are like 30 questions. This is Shelley Carson's um, test, which is telling you about how much creativity you have, or what is your orientation in terms of more deliberate or more spontaneous orientation in terms of creativity. Let me put this in a stop. You don't have to complete this, I mean, for a grade, but I strongly recommend you to take a to take this quiz. Let's say these are 20 something questions, I think, that will generate a result as to what is your level of creativity. So it seems there is a problem with the internet connection here, so I cannot access the website link. So if you have a chance, you can check this link in the slides uploaded to Blackboard. So you can do this individual test on creative orientation. I'm gonna finish this chapter here.